How are you? Good? Truly? Truly good?
Oh, maybe okay.
How about now? That's good.
Yes.
Yay, team. Thanks for being my technical advisor. I don't know how many or few people we're gonna have. I haven't had much luck getting many people here. Which is not good. Let's try.
I'm doing the open house for Kathy,
Good.
Saturday.
Happy?
Mhm.
Good. Good for you.
If I can't find anyone to go, I'm probably have to do it myself.
Mhm.
Have, one of the boys come.
Feeling this, Robin. A few more minutes. It could be just you and me. Nobody's wanting to learn any new things. Yeah, it's so much, if it's black and white, it's, I forget what it is, you know. Maybe a nickel. And if it's color, like, you'd have to ask Elizabeth, I can't remember. And we also have, if you want to print like flyers or cards, a lot of girls come here, a lot of guys come here and they print it here. But we also have an account at Office Depot that uses see this kind of.
Okay.
Anybody coming? Have you done a brochure before for an open house?
No.
I would have Karen or Elizabeth help you with that. You have a kind of computer, you have,
This, maybe more, maybe more.
okay. So it's a regular one, which is good, because I don't know the other, but I don't know what program you can use. I don't know if you have Publisher. One of the things I tend to use is Mitch and Dale. They have, the ability to print brochures, and they can give good information. They have something about the house, but then they also have some different loan options. And they print it and give it to you,
Oh, okay.
so you don't have to do it. And then you can just print, what I a lot of times do is just print the MLS page, because it's got all the information.
Right.
When you try to get creative, sometimes it takes you forever.
Yeah.
But if you just do a little postcard with a picture and some highlights, your face, your number, just make it simple.
Right.
Don't try to get too much information on them,
Yeah.
because that's a lot of times what happens is we try to think, okay, it's got this, it's got that, and then before you know it, you've got all this information. Most people, when they pick up something, you're lucky if they look at it for 5 seconds. So you wanna just try to catch their eye. And get something on there that, they always want to know price, so. And if they're coming to your open house, they've probably seen it online, and they've probably already known a lot of information, or they wouldn't be there. If they're just truly somebody just driving down the road, and they go, oh, wow, an open house, let's go, then they don't, but that's so rare anymore. It's, most people are online and they know about your open house, and a lot of times they're showing up before you ever even know. Good. Let's wait another 5 minutes, see if anybody else shows up. Not that you're not important. Casey Fogelman's coming. What? Casey? I have half a camera.
What? Hey, did you get my email?
Yeah, I read through it. I'm a little confused. Whose client is this?
Okay, so I knew that would be really hard, so. My sellers sold their condo in Windsor Gardens
That's what I thought. Okay.
to these buyers
Uh-huh.
and, they,
And the special assessment.
so the special assessment occurred quite a bit later.
It was voted on later.
Yeah, the hailstorm occurred. My guys left. My guys hadn't lived there. They went to Italy. The hailstorm occurred on May 30th, and then the board itself didn't even get together until September to go over the results of the inspection. Because at first they didn't think the damage was that bad. But when you do an assessment, you assess all buildings, whether the damage
Right.
was there or not. So the buyers are saying that it was a material defect, which it was not, because it was unknown to us at the time that there was damage, even if there was damage to their roof. So they got a hold of Pino's email and kind of, I said, you saw that, and they just kind of were a little bit like, it's your responsibility by Colorado law. And,
Talk to David about this?
huh?
Did you talk to David about this?
Well, I'm doing the same thing, and mine was fine. My insurance company is paying it and everything.
Mhm.
I don't think they had the right yes, so the answer is yes. I also talked to Kevin early
Right.
on, because I was worried about if I should just right away talk to an attorney, and he said 99% of the time, it turns out to be a no-brainer, that it is not the responsibility of the seller, because the actual moment in time when they decided that the insurance was going to be an assessment was when they were the owners of the unit.
Right. And what day did you guys close?
July 1st.
Okay. That's
And the actual notice went out on July 2nd that they would be having meetings to talk about an upcoming assessment, and then they voted on it, I think like November 22nd.
Okay, so they have the ability to go to the HOA, to check with the HOA, to see if there was any upcoming potential assessments before they
They
close.
did, and they had all the HOA docs at the time,
Right?
to review.
And
I don't know if they reviewed them. I'm not their agent, Bob, otherwise we would have reviewed them.
so they never said that they did review or didn't review,
They signed the, they did sign the documents.
okay,
Yeah.
so. I think they're barking up a tree. Hello.
So as you know, we can go on to your show here, but, I know they're gonna try to maybe possibly sue Ken and Pino, and I don't know, maybe they won't. But I told Pino not to respond. And I said that if anything goes forward, it's gonna have to be between them and the buyers, because I can't get involved.
I've got to go get my charger. I think my computer just ran out.
Okay. Hi, Letitia. Sorry we didn't get to do that open house.
Oh, yeah.
So guys, what she's talking about, and Warner and Nicole, I guess you can hear me. It would be great if you wanted to have your camera on, but if you don't, you don't. And if you have questions, but she's talking about a deal that she closed. And there was a potential after the closing of a special assessment that was done because of a hailstorm. And this is one of the things that's very important when you go to list a property. You always want to ask your sellers, is there by chance a special assessment in the planning? And oftentimes they will say no. But you also want to call up the HOA and just check with them and say, hey, is there any potential for a special assessment? Because sometimes they get mailed a notice and they don't see it. What?
Ding, ding.
So, and what happens is when you have a special assessment, if somebody has insurance or what's called loss assessment insurance, then you can get the insurance covered. You can get the item covered and not have to worry about that you are going to have to pay except for your deductible. So you had one on your property, right, Casey?
Yes, we did.
And I had one on my condo over here in Arvada a few years back. Just to give you an idea, we had a $7,000 special assessment. Because there was hail damage, which is typical. And it did fencing and siding and all of that kind of stuff. And with loss assessment insurance, I was insured up to 25,000. And all that I had to pay was my deductible of 500 on 7,000. So, and it's very, very, very inexpensive. Right? Do you remember how much your policy is?
Our policy isn't too bad. I think it's like, it was like a couple $100 for the year. It was a $50,000 coverage. We have a $500 deductible. Our assessment was larger than the one for my clients because our unit's bigger, but it was 1990 and we had to pay 500, so the rest is getting covered. So. And I think the one that these guys have is only 1,500 because they have a small unit. So it's not a huge assessment. It's not like, I mean, it's huge to some people, but I mean, it's not, it could be worse, I guess.
It could be very bad.
Yeah, I think they did pretty well keeping it minimized.
And what are they saying that the special assessment is gonna be there?
Huh?
It's relegated to the size of the unit, right?
Yes,
And the square footage of the building.
correct.
So if you have a bigger building and you have a smaller unit, you're gonna pay less than what the bigger units pay.
That's correct.
Yep. So I think I saw in there it was something like anywhere from 1,400 to 3,900 or something like that.
Yeah, there's about 12, I think there's 12 townhomes over there that are 2-story, that are about 2,000, 2,500, 2,800 square feet. And so those each have like a different roof, because those are a different building, so those are gonna cost more.
Right.
And those probably had more damage than the other ones, to be honest with you.
So are you guys that are also on Zoom, are you familiar with condominiums, townhomes, and HOAs and what can possibly occur with something like this?
I'm pretty familiar. I'm honestly learning a lot about it right now because the client that I'm under contract for, we're in the process of waiting for our HOA documents to come through so that we are able to verify whether or not there is a special assessment in place.
Good.
Because we had our inspection done on Monday and the inspector came back and let us know that there's like some wear and tear with age on the roof and then also hail damage. So we
Okay.
started doing some digging on that, but we're still waiting for the HOA docs. And then Margaret was telling me to make sure that my client has the loss assessment coverage with his home insurance. So he's working on making sure that he is all good with that.
Okay. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, that's excellent, and that's one great reason to be in productivity coaching, because you're going to learn things that you need to do when you get to title work. A lot of us, when we first get in the business, we just go, oh, we're under contract, here's your title work, let me know if you read through it. Well, you wanna glance through it too, and you wanna be proactive about it, because there are a lot of potential hazards out there. And I don't mean in a dangerous way, but there's ways to, if you don't navigate correctly, you may not get closed. One of the big things is finding out if, let me shut that door. 1 second. One major thing is when you're working with a buyer, if they're a FHA or a VA buyer, you want to know that the complex you're showing is FHA or VA approved. And there are 2 websites that you can go to and find that out. Now, if you can't find it, sometimes they're a little bit ambiguous in getting that information. I've called up Mitch numerous times. If you guys haven't met Mitch, I would introduce yourself to him, because he's a wealth of help. The other thing is you want to try to get the condominium questionnaire filled out as quickly as possible. So you know for sure that the complex is warrantable. Because sometimes there's been class action lawsuits or whatever, and you find out that the only way you can get a loan is if you get it through like a bank. Sometimes like Bank of England, Chase, those kind of banks, and they don't do a typical Fannie or Freddie type loan. So, and that you can't ever assume just because the listing agent has it listed as FHA approved or VA approved. You can't assume that it is. And even if you look in the complex and say within the last month, a unit has sold with a VA loan, that doesn't necessarily mean it's still VA approved. Now, there are things called spot approvals, which Mitch will have some classes on these things. And a lot of times they can get a spot approval for a unit. Or they'll help to get the complex redone so that they are VA or FHA approved. But don't assume just because the listing agent has it listed that they're taking FHA and VA, that it's ability to do so. I would say that probably, I don't know, 20% of the properties that I look at, that I go to look at, and because I work with a lot of veterans, and if they're looking for a condo, I check them out before I ever go, because one thing you can do is take a buyer out to look at homes, and they get all excited about this one, and then you pull up and find out, after the fact, that it's not VA approved. So, yes, you can get them spot approved, but that takes some more time. And it can be kind of a headache, and a lot of times your buyer will just say, I want out, I don't want to go forward with this. So, have you used those websites, Casey?
Yes, every time we even look at one first, I double check. And also when we're selling them, I usually I'm going through one right now where I'm selling in Aurora, but it's a townhome, so I don't really have to worry about it. It's not a condo.
So the way we know whether or not it's it is a townhome or a condo is we have to go by the legal description. Okay, and the legal description, typically, if it's a condo, it's going to have a unit number. Now, it may say that the name of the complex is ABC Townhomes, but if they have unit numbers, they're a condo. If they're a townhome, then automatically they're approved for VA. You don't have to worry about it. If they're a true townhome, they don't have to be on the approved list. But if they are a condo at all, they have to show up on the approved list. Okay? Any questions, you guys? No. That was easy. And it's going to give you, when you pull up those websites, it's going to give you if it's active and it's approved and when that expires. And let's say you notice that it expires in 10 days. Then you want to be forthright and go find out, are they in the midst of getting it reapproved? Or what's the process? And make sure you reach out to your lender. Reach out to your lender at any time, and that's why it's so important that your clients get hooked up with a good lender, because some lenders are lazy about checking things out. They don't get the condo questionnaire filled out quickly. And you may be 3/4 of the way through a deal and find out the complex is not warrantable, and you can't get a loan in there without going to a bank, like I said, okay? So when you're going to list, that's really important for you when you go out on a listing appointment ahead of time. And the first thing you want to do before you list a property is what, Casey? Before you even go out there?
Before you even go out to the property?
Yeah, before you ever go out to the property, do you ever call your title company or a title company? Because you don't know what title company yet the seller is going to allow to use. Usually they're going to use who you recommend to them, because they go, well, I don't know anybody. Who would you recommend?
I usually do my O&E on the property myself.
That's the one I wanted to hear.
Okay.
So O&E is it's a report that basically is going to give you all the details on the property. It costs you $5 from the title company, and they can usually have it to you in a day from the time you order it. So don't be going out to see a property, and you get a call and they say, I want you to come over and look at our house today. Well, you're probably not going to get the O&E that quickly, but if it's a day later, I'm sure you'll be able to get an O&E pulled. It doesn't typically take them too long, and a lot of times you can just tell your sales rep or your processor or whoever that you need kind of a rush, and is there any way they can get it to you in a couple of hours? Because they'll do their best to try, and that's one nice thing about us having land title here, is they will do everything they can in their ability to try to help you out and get that taken care of. Okay? So the O&E is going to tell you what is owed on the property, you know, when they bought it. It's gonna give you a lot of information. It's also gonna give you a legal description that is going to typically be different than what is shown on the public records in RE Colorado. That is the correct legal description. The one that you pull up on the public records in RE Colorado is not typically the right one. It sometimes does match, but it oftentimes is different, somewhat different. So you want to make sure you have the correct legal description, because that's what you're going to be using for the listing in your legal description on your listing agreement. Okay? So it does cost $5. And it's, like I said, you can typically get a rush done if you need it. Most people are not going to call up and say, hey, I want you to come and list my house, or need you to come over and look, we want to list tomorrow. They're gonna typically be looking at this a week or 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, or a month or 6 months, whatever. But go ahead and just get in the habit of pulling that O&E and keep it in your file, so you have that. What's another important thing about an O&E that it's gonna show you? Can you think of something? I don't know if you've had any of these come up.
Liens,
What was that?
liens.
Yep, liens, like the old IRS. So we had 2 sellers last year in our office. And they were working with one of our agents, a couple of our agents. And they went to list their house. Fortunately, both of our agents had pulled up the O&E and found out there was some fairly substantial tax liens. And tax liens get paid before anything else, period. So these people fortunately had enough equity to pay off their lien for their IRS, but they wanted to try to, one of them wanted to try to skirt around the fact, and they were hoping, I think, that it hadn't got recorded. Well, it was recorded. They were selling little over $1 million house, and they had $250,000 lien against them. Fortunately, they had about $500,000 in equity, but they were still only going to get about half of what they were hoping for, right? So it became a little bit contentious, and but the lien had to be satisfied. Now they could have said, well, then we can't sell if they had a lien on it that was you know, more than what they had in equity. They could have said, well, we can't do this, and, you know, give the buyer back their inspection monies and their earnest money, of course, and everything. But there are a fair amount of tax liens out there. The other thing you can find out when you get your O&E is, have people been refinancing their house? And you can see that even on public records on RE Colorado. I went to look at a house, I was pulling up a listing for somebody showing in our office, and I pulled up the public records, and I looked in there, and you can see the refinances, and I told the agent, look at this, they have 7 refis in 2 years. Why, I don't know, and that's their prerogative, but it's something you need to know before you go out to list a property to see, you know, how much equity do they have, because they may be just barely able to scrape by with paying compensation to you, and if they're going to pay to the buyer's agent, and so on and so forth, and they may not have enough money to actually sell their house, or they may say, well, we need to list our house for 700, and you tell them, well, you know, the comps only show that it's worth 600. Well, we have, you know, we have some things we gotta get paid off and we want it at 7. Well, you may say, you know what, I'm not sure I'm gonna be the right person to help you, because you don't wanna just take a listing to take a listing. And especially right now in this market, it's a little bit different. We're not in what I'd call a buyer's market, but in some areas we are somewhat. And I would say we're definitely in a buyer's market on condominiums. Because right now we have probably 4 to 5 months of inventory of condos. How are condos selling over in Windsor Gardens, Casey?
They're not doing too bad right now. There's still quite a few.
Yeah, I looked about a month ago and I know there was quite a few on the market.
Yeah, there was like 50 or so. I don't know. I haven't looked recently, but there's probably at least 30 right now that are active. And some of those, believe it or not, I would say about 2% of those have been on the market for a while. They're flips. That are just overpriced. And I get, you know, from my research and what I've been helping my buyers with right now and my seller of a condo, condos aren't selling. They're not selling as fast. And we were talking about one yesterday to put an offer in, and it's an agent who's selling the unit. And he was not a very nice guy when I told him, you know, we were going to put an offer in. And in his MLS thing, he said, no lowball offers. The price is the price. You know, and so he owns it, and it's got some issues. It's definitely got some issues. And when I told him our concerns and that we were going to put in a cash offer, the windows are really bad on that west side because of all the sun and weather and all that. They're bad. I mean, they're single pane, terrible windows. And he goes, well, if that's your biggest concern is the windows, then this unit isn't for you. So, you know, when you're going with condos, this has been on the market for 3 months, and he told me he got another offer around 397, and he wanted to go down just because he wanted to get it sold. But my clients, you know, it's the same thing. It's like, well, you clearly have already stated your case, so we're going to move on. Like the negotiation stopped with his MLS. Like, don't.
Yeah.
So condos are difficult right now. I think it might have something to do with the sellers.
And if you're working for a buyer, you're representing them and their interests. You're not worried about if the seller or the owner / seller is an agent and they say, well, I'm not gonna take a lowball offer. Well, I'm not gonna write an offer that's overvalued.
Right.
Right? I'm gonna make sure my client is taken care of. And that's what you have to make sure you're doing. It's nice in this market in a lot of respects that it's much more balanced. And like I said, condos are definitely more of a buyer's market right now because there's so much inventory. So it's nice that you are able to, a lot of times, get some deals. I'm not sure, Warner or Nicole, if you were on Coffee Talk Monday. I don't think you made it either, did you, Casey? But I had told you about the builder that I just put a townhome out in Aurora, basically at I-70 and 470, and they are offering the buyer $30,000 in concessions. 30,000. Did you hear me? 30,000?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a big number.
Well, yeah, it's huge. And Casey, you said that Toll Brothers was actually offering something like that too, right? In concessions? You're off. Your mic's off.
Sorry, between 10 to 30,000, $30,000 for the ones that are coming in March and April, and 10,000 on the ones that are currently available.
Yeah, it's not like a lot of them are doing a national, what they call a national sales event. And they're not saying that every house they have for sale is going to be this concession. They're saying that particular ones, now the one I sold, they said, if you go under contract by last Thursday, you got $30,000. So my people were pretty ready to go and say, yeah, we want to get that. Not only that, but my compensation was pretty much double of what it would normally be. So it was a very nice surprise. And and they said, the only thing you have to do is you have to contract before the 30th, the end of day. And that was that. So, there are deals out there, and, you're going to tend to find more of those with condo townhomes than you are with houses. But having said that, they are offering deals on specific homes too. The builder I'm talking about is Meritage, and they have some homes in an area called Buffalo Run in Commerce City. And also, I can't think of the name of the area in Brighton, but they have certain homes that they're offering, some large concessions and a bonus for, your compensation. So it's something definitely worth checking out. And guys, go out and meet builders and talk to them. Because if you build up a rapport with a one or two or three sales reps, it can really benefit you, because they will reach out to you when there's something special going on and let you know. I have a very good rapport with the lady at DR Horton, and she is always reaching out to me to tell me about, certain sales that they're having and incentives. And, I've sold quite a few just because she's been so good about reaching out to me and letting me know. And sometimes I don't have a buyer that, you know, is going to be a good fit for it, but sometimes I do. And it's a great thing. And you can typically get a very easy, smooth deal, if your buyer is qualified. And you typically have to get qualified through the buyer or through the builder's lender. But Casey, I think you said that at Toll, you were able to actually use your own lender also?
You can use your own lender. You don't get all the incentives with the finance, the interest rate buy downs. They still are offering those concessions, like the one we're looking at that would be about between April and June, which is a new model. They would give us $30,000
Okay.
if we used our own lender,
That's
which
no
helps
problem.
out a lot with that price range because they're less money, you know.
So,
the new ones.
so that's when you're working with buyers, you wanna have as much knowledge as you can in areas. That's why sometimes it's hard for people to say, well, I'll go show in Colorado Springs, or I'll go up to Fort Collins. You wanna make sure you do your due diligence before you go trucking off in areas that you're not familiar with, because you may not know, you know, a lot of, information about things that are happening, about new builds, and it's not just getting in the car and going and showing them what you find in MLS. It's a lot of times really digging in and trying to find information that's not readily available to us on RE Colorado or PPAR down in Colorado Springs. It's builders are offering a lot of things that they aren't advertising in the MLS, right? So be aware of that for your buyers. Another thing on the listing side, before you go out to list a property, or before you actually do a listing, try to walk the property with your client and just go around the house and ask them questions and point things out and make sure that they understand that you're looking at the house, not to just stick a sign in the yard, but that you're really wanting to sell the house with an understanding of what kind of condition the house is in. And you don't need to be a structural engineer. You don't need to do anything to where, well, I'm not gonna list that house because I think that maybe have a structural problem. You gotta find these things out and then have those discussions with your client and see if there's going to be a way that you can help them, because they're looking to you for your help, to get it marketed. And most of the time, you have honest people that are just trying to sell their house, and sometimes they don't know that they have an issue, right? So you guys, I know Casey knows, Lee and Nicole, I'm not sure if you guys know what I do, but prior to me listing a property, almost all of them, I have the roofing looked at and certified by my roofer, if he deems that it can be certified. Now, if he looks at it and said, man, we got a problem, it's got some severe hail damage, my sellers will be able to probably get new roofing through their insurance company, maybe even before we go on the market, or very shortly after that. So I'm closing on a house up in Longmont Friday, and when I had from the ground, the roofing looked pretty good. But when my guy got there and looked at it, he goes, yeah, it's got some big hail damage. And it was vacant because it was an estate sale. So, yes, it cost them a little bit of money out of their pocket, but they got new roofing put on the property, which now we're able to market the house with new roofing, which is worth a little bit more than a house that you don't know, right? If you're able to advertise and say, new roofing installed this month as you go on the market, it's a huge benefit. Now, the other thing I do is I always have the sewer line scoped. So this house is a little different situation. It has a septic system. So if you guys are familiar with it, septic systems have a line from the house to the septic tank. And then they have a line from the septic tank that goes out to what's called the leach field. So you can't really scope the one from the tank to the leach field. But that gets looked at when you're going to get a certification. Long story short, I had the 12, 14-foot line scoped, and it was bad. It was made with a composite called Orangeburg. And Orangeburg is a sewer line that was built out of wood and paper and glued together, basically, back in the days when maybe after the wars and stuff, and they were low on a lot of products that they would normally use for septic systems or for sewer lines or septics. And this Orangeburg was just disintegrated. When you put the camera in there, you could hardly see a line. All that you could see is a bunch of mush. So they got that fixed, which was $2,500 out of their pocket, but we had a new sewer line. Then I also told them, let's go ahead and get the septic system certified, because you have to have a certification before you close. Well, they came out to certify the tank was good, but the line from the tank to the leach field was bad. So they ended up getting that replaced as well. So we had new sewer lines and new roofing before we ever went on the market, okay? And I also have all the windows cleaned, because a lot of people let their windows go, they don't clean them. And a house shows much, much, much better if you have the windows cleaned. I also have the house cleaned, I had my gal go in and clean right before photos. Because I want to help the sellers out, and especially because this house was vacant. They don't have to worry about it. My gal goes in there and cleans it all up, and then we can get photos taken. So we have clean windows, nice clean house, and photos turn out much, much better. Also, I'm going to stage it if it really warrants being staged. This one, they had enough furniture there that we just kind of staged it and had it in good shape. And then sometimes I'll always ask them if you would like radon tested before. Know that the buyer's probably going to get it tested, and if radon's high, they're probably going to ask for it to be mitigated. Most people say, we'll just wait and let them test it, and if they do come back, then we'll address that at that time. So it's important to me to know that when I list a property, we're probably going to get through inspection without much problem. Now, there's always going to be times when something comes up. In this particular house, the first buyer, he wasn't aware of what a septic system really was. He was a first-time home buyer. And for whatever reason, the agent didn't explain it to him. And when he was at the inspection, he just said, I don't want a house with a septic system. Now, that's the first time I've had that one happen. So they backed out, which is fine. You know, it wasn't the right house for him. He paid to have an inspection, but he withdrew. Then we put it right back on the market and went right back under contract. And, you know, it's kind of a weird thing to tell a incoming agent, the reason that we backed out, the deal fell apart is because the buyer wasn't aware of what a septic system was. So even though it was written in the listing, and this gentleman came through on an open house, and I explained to him, you know, that we had had new lines put in, the septic tank and everything. So I don't know, it was very strange. But it went right back under contract a week later. Any questions, you guys? No?
No, I just like I like
Yeah.
the checklist when you do your listing. I like to know that stuff.
Say
Some
that
good
again?
information. Says
Yeah.
some good information that, you know, I have a list that I wrote down, like the roofing, the sewer scope, get the windows cleaned, house cleaned. That's some good
Yeah.
information to know.
I've got a good group of people that I know I can trust and that I can line up and get things taken care of prior to going on the market. And then if I see some things that might be a potential issue, especially structural, I may tell my people, you know, I will pay to have my structural engineer come out. If there is work to be done, then that's going to obviously have to come out of your pocket, but he will come out and look at a property, and if it doesn't need a report, then he just charges a fee to come out and look at it. If it deems that it needs a report so that it can be conveyed to the buyers, then they would pay for that extra amount, which probably is gonna be $400 or $500. But just to come out, he'll a lot of times look at something, especially if it's not a whole lot, for 150 or 200. Now, a lot of you might say, well, man, you're already dishing out quite a bit of money. Yeah, I put some money into it, but I also feel like I get paid a very fair wage for what I provide to them. And it also gives, I hate not knowing that we're going to go under contract, and are we going to have a bad roof? Are we going to have bad gutters? Because when they're looking at the roofing, my guy's gonna look at the gutters too. You know, he may look at the roof and say, you got a great roof, but did you know your gutters are shot? Well, you can get those taken care of. Gutters are certainly not a high-end item like the roofing is. And, you know, it's just gonna make your transaction much, much smoother. And it's not that you're not going to have deals fall apart, because sometimes things come up in an inspection that you can't see. Like I had another house up in Longmont. It's actually a friend of this one, and we had everything done. But when they bought the house, they wanted to have a mold inspection. Now, I'm going to tell you guys right now that every house has mold, period. It doesn't matter where it is, it doesn't matter what. Some houses are gonna have a very, very, very low amount of mold. Once in a while, you're gonna have a house that is above the standards of what they believe. Well, this other house up in Longmont had kind of a high amount of mold from what looked like, and they had pets, and they were the original owners of this house that was 55 years old. They had pets through the years and so on and so forth. Well, when they tested for it, it had quite a bit of a high reading of certain types of mold. We were able to get somebody in there. They said, if you pull up the carpet, which the people wanted the carpet pulled up in the living room because there was hardwoods, and if you clean the lower level carpets and you have the furnace and the ducting cleaned, it should take care of everything. And you would not believe the junk that came out of that, the furnace, not so much the furnace, but the ducting. The ducting had all kinds of dirt in it. And they took pictures of what had been cleaned out to give to the buyer. And then we retested, and of course, the amounts came way down within a safe scope, which that's what we're looking for. So, you know, sometimes you're gonna have things like that happen. You just can't you can't foresee everything, but you can certainly try to be proactive and try to make the deal as simple as possible. Have any of you guys that are on the call had a listing yet? I take that as a no.
I haven't yet, but I have a seller that's looking to sell probably in the
Okay.
June-ish type. He's waiting for some things to happen with his work, so. But yeah,
I see.
hopefully something can happen.
Uh-huh. And how about you, Nicole? You haven't yet, have you? Had a listing? Nope, guess not. She might have left. Well, if you guys are going to get a listing and you want to sit down, or if you want to come with me sometime when I go on a listing appointment to talk to my clients, I'm happy to take you along with me. The only listings I have coming up in the near future are some estate sales from, my partner that I worked with for many years, and he passed away, and so we're selling all of his rental properties. So, but no matter what, I still get all of the rental properties as good a shape as possible. And still have windows cleaned. One of them I didn't because the house was pretty bad, and it was just gonna be sold to a fix and flipper, and we didn't worry about it. But if it's gonna benefit from having the sewer line, and I 99% of the time have the sewer line scoped, just because you're going to tend to find problems, half the time, I'd say. Last year I had, I'm not sure the number of listings. I think I had 15 listings last year, and I had at least 6 properties that had a sewer line issue where we had to have it repaired. One house that I closed in Commerce City, in the old Commerce City, we had to have the whole line from the house out to the street repaired. And that was more expensive because it went into a busy street. When they do a repair in a busy street, they have to have people that are guiding traffic that are from the city, and that costs them more money because they have to stand out there and make sure nobody, drives into the trench. So that one was like 13,000. Most of the time, you can get a repair or something done for, 4,000 or 5,000. But once in a while, the whole line may be bad. And that's why I got it done for him. I said, let's get it scoped and see, and sure enough, he had it as a rental for 10 years and never had any problem. But the sewer line was bad shape, very bad shape. And oftentimes what you see happen is the sewer line starts to break apart quite a bit, and the sewage just goes out into the ground. And so it doesn't necessarily back up. It's just according to the scenario, but just because they're having a problem with the sewer doesn't mean there is not a sewer line problem, okay? And same with roofing, like I said, I just like to know. So once you walk around with your sellers, then you can have a list of some things that, you think they may want to get addressed to try to help them get the most. Maybe they have a broken seal on a window or a bad cracked window, and if it's a cracked window, you can't offer FHA or VA unless you're planning on fixing it. Because if you have a seller that says, well, I'm not fixing any cracked window, I have 5 of them. Well, then we're gonna be limited to a cash buyer or a conventional buyer. Because FHA or VA will make that a condition for the appraisal, period. 100%. It has to be fixed, okay?
Yeah.
So those are things you have to look at when you're, out previewing the house with your client that's going to sell. And then I never discuss price at the first meeting, even if it's a close relationship that I have. Some people I've sold 5 or 6 homes for them. I'm not really gonna discuss. I'm gonna, maybe if they push it some, I'm gonna give them a range and say, yeah, I think, we're looking in the lower to middle 500s from what I've seen. But now that I've looked at your house and I know what kind of condition it's in, maybe things that need to be addressed, then I can go back and pull up comps and really narrow it down, so I know that, hey, we're in a good market. These things get taken care of, we should be easily at the 550 to 560 mark when I go back to talk to them. And more times than not, they're going to say, oh, well, I want to list it higher. But there's still some things that you want to discuss with them there. So one thing I'm going to tell you, Lee, is if you're going to be listing in June, the market tends to slow down in June. It tends to slow down in May, the end of May or middle of June. This year, kind of the consensus is that we are going to slow down probably a little earlier because we have a little more inventory than normal. And we still haven't seen the peak of inventory raise up due to just the time of year, because a lot of people are going to start listing their house here within the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And the best time of year this year is probably going to be in the first quarter and the first half of the second quarter. Once you get into the second quarter, then when we get into June and especially July, the market tends to start to quiet down because people are going to take vacations and want to get their kids to, to do something for the summer for fun before school starts back up. So a lot of times we see a pretty dramatic slowdown in July and August. And then it tends to pick back up in maybe the end of August, September. And then it's usually pretty darn good up through the holidays. And just according to how much inventory there is. So that's why pretty much every Monday morning, I give you guys a count of how many houses are on the market within a 20-mile radius of Denver, and how many townhomes and condos are on the market, and how many are pending, and how many have sold in the last 30 days. This is all information you should know when you go to talk to a seller about listing their house. And when you're out showing, you want to be able to very intelligently tell your buyer, yeah, there's been five of these units sold in the last 2 months. And this is, this unit, there was 2 that sold just like the unit we're looking at, and this is the price points they sold at. One was much more updated, one was, in terrible shape. It seems like this one is priced pretty well, and it seems like this one is way overpriced. So that for a fact of what you're talking about. You don't ever want to just guess. So it's just as important for you when you're going out to show buyers that you really do your homework and know about the complex or area that you're looking at. Because maybe you're showing a buyer 5 or 6 different condos or townhomes or whatever they may be. Really try to get the information and write yourself little notes on a sheet of paper or whatever. I always print out the listings and give them to my buyers of every property we're going to see. And I give them a notebook and a pen, and that way they can write notes on every property that we take a look at, and they're going to have a catalog. So if it takes, 30 showings, they're going to have a list of all those properties. But when they have that ability to look back, it's much easier for them to start narrowing down what are they really looking for and what's important to them. Because a lot of people, when they first start looking, they're not sure. And once they start making those notes on properties they see and areas they see and things that I'm going to tell them about the area, maybe, they didn't realize that it backed up to power lines. And a lot of times I will look at that, especially with houses, and especially in Aurora. There's a lot of areas of Aurora where there's power lines that back up to houses, and other areas as well. But in Aurora, there's a lot of areas, and I will tell people before we even go look, this house does back up to power lines. I just want you to be aware of that. You still want to see it? Yes, we do. Okay, great. Or no, you're right. No, we don't want to see that. So it just saves you some time. And if they're unsure, say, go online and look up high-powered electrical lines and the effect of health. And I will tell you this, if you have a house that you're gonna list and it backs up to big power lines, it's going to take longer. And it's not gonna sell for as much as the same model as in the neighborhood that sits a block away from that power line. Team rally in 5 minutes, I don't think so. So, try to know your area that you're looking at. Go on RE Colorado or wherever you're showing and look at the area, look at the map, look at everything you can. You can even look at flood maps, now, the flood map is pretty darn close. It's not maybe exact, but there are areas when we get into, what's an area? Well, right over here by our office, just to the north, where Ralston Creek is, a lot of those homes over there used to be in the flood zone. They did do some, basically carving out of the area and making it wider so it could carry the water better. And it made it so a lot of the houses across the way, like on 60th, 59th, so they aren't in a flood zone anymore. But there are still houses over there in a flood zone. And if you look on RE Colorado, excuse me, you can pull up flood map when you're looking at the listings, and you can actually see the different types of flood zone or nothing, floodplain, there may not be anything. But if there is, it's good to know that, because if you go show a house to your buyer and they absolutely are crazy about it, and then you come to find out that it's gonna require flood insurance, which is basically another about the same amount as regular insurance, that may kick them out where they don't qualify, right? So you have a lot of work to do before you go show. I hope I haven't scared you, but I hope that this is something that you will take to heart and really start learning about areas that you go to, and not just say, we're gonna go look at a house or we're gonna go look at this condo and hopefully it's the right one. Well, make sure you know what's going on with those areas, and make sure you know about the flood zones, and make sure you know about the highways and the roads and the busy streets, and as much as you can. And the soils, that's a whole nother class I could teach you guys. There are a lot of hot pockets of bad soils in the Denver area. Real quick, one of them is a little area called Friendly Hills, which is right down at Hampton, and on the south, it'd be basically the southeast corner of Hampton and C-470. That area is notoriously bad with bad soils. I've been in houses in there that you could have had 2 zip codes because they've moved so much. Broomfield has a lot of very hot pockets of bad soils. Even areas here in Arvada, just to the west of our office here, if you take 57th and go down to Independence, 57th and Independence there's an area there where it's a fairly steep hill, and a lot of those houses in that area below the cemetery have got some real bad movement. You can see a lot of what they call stair-step cracking in the brick. So there's many things to learn about, and you can't learn everything, but don't be hesitant to reach out to me and say, hey, I'm showing in this area, anything that you can think of that I should know about. I'll be glad to talk it over with you. Lee, you have a question?
No, I was just gonna make a comment. I previewed a house. I previewed a house on 61st and Ward, and it was on the hill, the downside of the hill, and that thing was just cracked. Like you can see the bricks were shifted. You can see how they kind of tried to cover up the structural cracks with paint and stuff, and it was almost every room. You could look in the top corners and you'd see some kind of crackage or.
Yeah.
And you could tell, like in the garage, when the driveway in the garage where it's connecting, you can see where it's probably like a 3-inch drop, and you can see where the water was pooling, and they probably didn't take care of it for years, and it was just it's gonna be fun. You can see there's like structural paperwork from some company that came in and they did some estimates on it, but yeah, it's right off of 61st and Ward Road.
Yeah, know right where you're talking about. Now, it's one thing when I'm showing properties and if, sometimes if I'm not familiar with an area and you're not sure, but you're driving to a property and you start noticing you're going down a fairly steep hill and the house you're gonna show is at the bottom of that hill, right away, when I get out of the car, I'm gonna tell people, wasn't sure about this house being on this steep a hill, but one thing that we're really gonna look for is intrusion of water into the basement. Making sure that, because groundwater goes downhill. And so when you're showing a property that's at the bottom of a hill or towards the bottom of the hill, there's a very good chance that it's got some issues. And most people are, sellers are just gonna kind of pass it off as, oh, no big deal. We've lived here for 30 years. Yeah, well, you've lived here for 30 years and you haven't done anything to try to take care of that intrusion or to mitigate it so that it doesn't get worse. So it's something to be aware of. Even in a condominium complex, you could have buildings that back up to a fairly steep hill. Well, just because the HOA takes care of the building doesn't mean you're not gonna have some problems in your unit, right? So just a lot of different things to be aware of. Okay? Any questions, anybody? Was
Well, that's
this?
about it for me. I appreciate all your information though. Thank you.
Absolutely, Lee, thank you for joining. Nicole, thanks for being here. Casey, you must have left.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Nicole. Good luck with your deal.
Thank you so much.
You betcha. All right.
Oh, Bob, I just also wanted to ask you real quick. I had a question for you. Are you going to be available for me to give you a call here shortly?
Yes, I've got to make a call right now, but if you give
Okay.
me 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Do you need to talk as well?
Okay, Casey's still on the class.
I had to
Thank you.
walk out, but now I'm sitting here listening to
I can't
voices,
hear you.
like, what's going on? I'm leaving.
Bye. I'm gonna shut it down. I still can't hear you.